Haldo! Welcome back, everybody. Now it's time for the game that I'm sure some of you have been waiting for. A game that many consider to be one of the best Mario games of all time, as well as one of the greatest video games ever made. I'm of course talking about Mario's Time Machine. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's
Super Mario Brothers 3!
Thank you, crazily and unnecessarily loud MC from the Wizard. For those of you who thought my review of Mario 2 USA felt underwhelming, here's promising that I won't hold back for Super Mario Bros. 3. I remember getting this game in the mail back in 2010. It was late at night, I came home from a Memorial Day carnival down the street from our house. I was ready to go to bed, but then my mom came into my room with a manila envelope, and inside was an original NES cartridge for Super Mario Bros. 3. Only a few short minutes after playing it, I immediately joined the massive following that I soon found out it had. I mean, the only thing related to Super Mario Bros. 3 that I was even familiar with at the time was the cartoon. In fact, if I could just talk about the cartoon for a second, it's harmless, notwithstanding a few, adventures. But one thing I'll never understand is why Princess Toadstool doesn't have a belly button. Or the fact that she's voiced by Sailor Moon. Anyway, back to the game. Now, I'm not kidding when I say Super Mario Bros. 3 has a gigantic following. Just saying it has a big following is almost kind of an understatement. But needless to say, the reception was incredibly positive when it was released on February 9th, 1990. So, at the time of its launch over 25 years ago, what exactly did this game do that couldn't have been done before? Especially when the first Super Mario Bros. Left some massive shoes to fill. Well, let's pop this game in and see just how it managed to obtain such a legendary reputation. Well, for one thing, the story is certainly much more involved than before, but spoiler alert, not by much. After Princess Toadstool returns to the Mushroom Kingdom, the world is faced with a new gang of merciless baddies known as the Koopalings. And no, Shigeru Miyamoto, they're not just Bowser's minions, they are his children. The manual says they're his children, so he's the father. And no, I'm not gonna ask who the mother is, because I always assumed those kids were adopted anyway. The 7 Koopalings consist of Larry Koopa, Roy Koopa, Morton Koopa Jr., Wendy O. Koopa, Ludwig van Koopa, Iggy Koopa, and Lemmy Koopa. Apparently they were modeled after Mario 3 developers, whose names I do not know. But their names were changed to the ones we know today out of inspiration from famous musicians. That's funny because I've seen a couple Koopalings try their hand at music. It was not pretty. So the Koopalings travel to 7 of the Mushroom Kingdom's worlds, steal magic wands from the kings of each world, and turn them into different animals, including Donkey Kong Jr. in the All-Stars remake. Now Mario and Luigi make it their mission to retrieve the stolen scepters, return the kings back to their normal forms, and eventually overthrow Bowser in his conquest of the Mushroom Kingdom. So yeah, this game is certainly sounding more engaging than previous games, but as for the gameplay, what changes have been made to the Mario formula? Short answer, plenty. And were those changes made for the better? Another short answer, yes. Super Mario Bros. 3 returns to the formula established in the original Super Mario Bros. 8 worlds to explore with Goombas to trample and question blocks scattered around to give you power-ups. However, Super Mario Bros. 3 approaches this formula a little differently. For one thing, we now have world maps, so the player is given a little more freedom to go wherever they want. All in all, these world maps are pretty cool. There are mini-games to come across, warp pipes to take you to different parts of the map, mini-bosses to encounter in hopes of scoring extra power-ups, and even secrets to uncover like magic whistles that can warp you to different worlds. My only gripe with the map system is that you can't revisit levels that you've already beaten. Maybe the point was to keep the player on a consistent path, but it's still a nitpick. Super Mario Bros. 3 is the first Mario game to feature the world themes that would consistently be recycled in later games, but I'll complain about that another time. For worlds we have Grassland, Desertland, Waterland, Giantland, Skyland, Iceland, Pipeland, and Bowser's Domain, Darkland. Grassland is a standard, welcome to the game, here's how you play it world, that is overall very welcoming and fun to explore. Desertland has a pyramid you can go inside, and a level where the sun is trying to hunt you down! Don't worry, Mario, the sun is my enemy too. Waterland is a lovely tropical setting that features the king's castle on an island shaped like Japan.
Clever.
Giantland is just what you think it is. Giant. Everything in it is big. The enemies, the blocks, everything. For some reason, this was a lot of people's favorite world, but for me, I never really saw the appeal. I mean, it's fun, don't get me wrong, but I just never saw the appeal. Skyland is the world set entirely in the sky, and that's pretty much it. Iceland is covered in ice, making way for some challenging platforming sections. Pipeland is like a giant maze where pipes can take you to just completely random places. What the? Whoa! Darkland is where things get really serious. Here, Bowser is terribly desperate to keep you from foiling his plan, so he throws everything at you, including the kitchen sink. Tanks, cannons, airships, pretty much anything that can kill or blow up. Just a shame the boss battles aren't that hard. Otherwise, I'd really be terrified. At least the power-ups from the first game are back. The Super Mushroom, the Fire Flower, they're all here. And we even get some new ones, too. The Super Leaf turns Mario into a flying raccoon. And if you run far enough, your P-meter will fill up to the maximum, allowing you to take to the skies. Yes, it's called a P-meter. I'd make a joke about that, but everyone else on the internet already did that. This is the same for the P-Wing and Tanuki suit, but the P-Wing keeps the meter at maximum until you beat the level, and the Tanuki suit allows Mario to turn into a statue.
Oh, Shigeru, you so crazy!
The Lakitu Cloud can only be used on the world map, but it lets you pass over levels you don't want to visit and just skip ahead to the next one. Problem is, it's only used once, so use it wisely. Unless you play the All-Stars version where you can just save and quit again and again until you just stockpiled with clouds. I love using this trick. The music box causes all enemies on the world map to fall asleep by playing a refrain from the Super Mario Bros. Overworld theme. No. But while I love all those new power-ups, the best one is definitely the Hammer Brothers suit. I mean, it's a Hammer Brothers suit. What's not to love? Despite it being one of the rarest power-ups to find in the entire game, it's awesome. In this form, you can throw hammers at enemies, and they're pretty powerful with them being able to kill just about anything. Even Boos, one of the new enemies. Oh, speaking of which, new enemies! Boos are these cute little ghosts that hide in shame when you look at them, but strike at you from behind when you look away from them. Apparently they are based on developer Takashi Teisuka's wife, who's supposed to be shy but with an explosive temper. I don't even have a joke for that, I'm honestly surprised. These big scary rock things are called thwomps, and they'll do their best to crush you even if you're an inch away. Whoa! You're not squashing me like a Goomba pancake, mister! Ah! What are those? Chain chomps. Think of it as like a dog on a leash. It'll lunge at you, but the chain will always hold it back. After about 43 times until the leash breaks and sends the chain chomp falling to his death. Boom Boom is this big, tough guy who pounds his chest like a tie-wearing gorilla and is actually really easy to beat. Did I mention he's a boss? Not a mini-boss, but a legit boss. That's kinda sad. Even Dry Bones is more threatening. He's at least the equivalent of an undead Koopa Troopa. Phew, I think I covered everything. Now, with all that stuffed into one game, could I possibly have run into any problems or nitpicks? Well, believe it or not, yes. For one thing, I'm a little iffy on the two-player mode. While I'm glad they made it so that players can now switch in and out whenever the player dies or beats a level, resolving the issue with waiting from the first game, my complaint is on the versus minigame. On the world map, both players can enter a battle mode in the style of the original Mario Brothers, where you can steal special items from one another or take each other's turns. That's fine and all, but I just wish that the active player was the one that starts the battle. No matter whose turn it is, either player can start the battle whenever one overlays on top of the other on the world map. Because of this, it's really easy for both players to be that guy who just wants to pick Rainbow Road, but then everyone hates him for it. All I'm saying, abusing power can ruin friendships. Another thing, the controls are a bit floaty. I admit Mario controls better than he did in the first game, but picking up speed I find to be pretty tough at times, especially if there are enemies blocking your path. I also find it a bit hard to control Mario in midair. When jumping, Mario carries a lot of momentum, so trying to nail the landing really depends on your timing. This issue was present in the first game and the Lost Levels too, but after playing Mario 2 USA, I can't help but notice this. Well, if I have to watch Mario jump around like a Jadoom platoon upon the moon, whatever that means, at least the game looks pretty. Super Mario Bros. 3 is without a doubt the best looking Mario game on the NES, bar none. The character sprites are much more detailed and lively than previous games, the backgrounds are much more distinguishable, and the inclusion of dancing plant life on the world map, well, a bit weird, really makes the world come alive. The music is some of the best to ever be composed for a 2D Mario game. The soundtrack has more of an island reggae sort of feeling, which is especially prominent in the overworld theme, grasslands theme, waterlands theme, and skylands theme. The airship theme is an especially great listen, perfectly giving the player a sense of fear and anticipation. Mario 3 is responsible for giving us as many memorable themes as the original Super Mario Bros., and I gotta commend Koji Kondo for outdoing himself with this soundtrack. So, overall, what's my verdict on Super Mario Bros. 3? Well, if you ask me, Super Mario Bros. 3 is a great time from beginning to end. In some areas. While I do think it's a great game, my biggest problem with the game is the difficulty. Now, it's nowhere near as hard as the Lost Levels, but it does have its moments. It starts out fine, but once we get to World 3, that's when it seems to go off balance for me. Later worlds you explore will end up being less challenging than worlds you've already explored. It's like the game is running back and forth instead of moving on a constant, gradually changing path. However, the game's level design, soundtrack, and replayability offers more than enough to make Super Mario Bros. 3 an absolute gem. It's not my favorite Mario game by far, but I'd have to be a complete idiot not to say that this game is a blast. So with a game as amazing as Super Mario Bros. 3, Nintendo's finally established a winning formula for the Super Mario series. Now where can they possibly go from here? Well, to one of my favorite game consoles of all time, the Super Nintendo, of course. I'll see you guys next time with the legendary Super Mario World. This is Mark, aka Super Smash 3DS, bidding you all a smashing farewell.